Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very special YoVAL presentation tonight. We've learned a lot over these months about issues relating to race and racism, and about its history here in America, how our schools are addressing it, and current day issues such as policing. But tonight is different. Tonight, we're not going to learn about something. Tonight, we have the opportunity to meet and hear from three of our neighbors. While, of course, there are as many life stories as there are people, the stories that Gary, Freddie, and Sister Eli will share with us are both personal and emblematic of the experiences of many people of color right here in our city and our neighborhood. They have confronted the criminal justice system, struggled with poverty and discrimination, and they've prevailed. The organization, Friends of the Children, with whom we plan tonight's program, has played a big role in the lives of all our speakers. It is an organization that pairs mentors with children who need support. And those mentors commit to fulfilling that role for 12 plus years while simultaneously working with the families. The outcomes of their efforts speak for themselves in graduation rates, employment, and the aspirations of all their participants. We are really so grateful that Gary, Freddie, and Sister Eli are willing to bring us into their lives and their world, and hope that it will inspire us all to continue to build a better New York for everyone. So now Ora Weinbach, our community educator, is going to moderate the discussion with our panelists. So let's get started.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you, Virginia. We are really in the middle of our year of very active listening, and as is very Jewish Center appropriate, most of our programs have been very theoretical and very intellectual, very academic. That's who we are. We're a community that prides ourselves on our intellectualism. And yet tonight we have a really different kind of opportunity, as Virginia already mentioned. We're moving from the abstract to the concrete, from the hypothetical to the real. And tonight we have the opportunity to hear from three individuals, their subjective, personal, real experiences. We're so grateful that they are willing to speak with us and share so personally. And we really look forward to listening with open minds and open hearts. We are going to meet our panelists in a moment, and we'll talk for around 45 minutes. And for the last 15 minutes, we'll take audience questions. Please send your questions directly to me in the chat as they arise. After our question and answer session, anyone who's interested in joining, we will have facilitated processing groups that will take place immediately afterwards. So just stay in the Zoom room while it takes us a few minutes to figure out the logistics. So now allow me to introduce you to our panelists. I'm going to welcome them onto this big screen with me. Here we go. Add spotlight. Hi, guys. So Gary Clemens started at Friends of the Children in Portland in 2008. And he was a friend to eight boys, and has risen really through the organization in multiple roles. And in 2018, he was recruited to serve as the executive director of Friends of the Children New York. Thank you, Gary, for joining us this evening. And Freddie is a native New Yorker who graduated from Syracuse University in 2017. She currently lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and is working as a legal professional while growing her small business. And Sister Eli, who's also joining us, hi, Sister Eli, is a graduate of the Women's Leadership and Media Project, which is run by the Women's Prison Association. She advocates for systems-involved women through events and media. She also is a founding member of the Parent Policy Advisory Committee of Friends of the Children New York, which works to empower parents with the knowledge and tools to advocate for meaningful change. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We want to start by getting to know you. So if you could kind of briefly, if possible, just share a little bit about who you are. Tell us kind of like your life story. So where did you grow up? What was your family of origin like? Your education, your career, and any memories, happy memories you had growing up. Who wants to start? Gary, you want to get us going?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Good evening, everyone. Like I said, my name is Gary Clemens. I guess my origin, I'll talk about my origin. Originally, my family, obviously a long time ago from Nigeria and Ghana. But, we came over enslaved and came over more recently. My great-great-grandmother was raped by her slave master, and that's why I have lighter skin. So that's part of my heritage too, European heritage. That's on my mother's side. On my father's side, my great-great-grandmother is Jewish. And so, I have part of the family that's practicing Judaism. So I'm originally from Jersey. I was born in Jersey. My parents divorced when I was 6, and I became a bi-coastal kid when I was 6 years old. So my mother moved to Inglewood, California, and I spent half the time in Inglewood, another half in Jersey. My father was a single father. We didn't have a lot of money in Jersey, but he did have a house that was handed down to him. So we had an acre of land in Jersey, and my next door neighbor was my grand aunt. And right next door to her was my grandmother, and then across the street was my grand uncle. So we've had about 5 acres in Jersey. So that was very fond memories there. The school I went to there was it was an integrated school. It had a variety of different socioeconomically, it was diverse. I would say probably the first time I realized that I was Black when I was probably in 5th grade. Beth told me she couldn't be my friend anymore because I was Black. And that was probably the first time that I realized that I was different, and things started to kind of change for me in the sense of the way people treated me probably around 5th grade. I eventually moved to Inglewood, California, and I moved to Inglewood during the 80s. This was at the height of gangs rose in the 80s. I went to high school. I eventually became, gang involved for a little while. I had a track coach that kind of helped me get me to college. I went to college. Originally, I went to junior college in the Valley, about an hour and a half away from California. And then I went to, and then when I was in junior college, I had my first daughter at 19. So I got a football scholarship to Portland State, played football there, did well. But my senior year, I became impacted by the criminal justice system, which led to me being homeless for a little while. But while I was home, I started my own business, a dog training business, and one thing led to another, where I was able to buy my own house for a while, and then kind of when, as mentioned, I started as a friend at Friends of Children 12 years ago, and kind of worked my way up, and been here in New York, and was excited to return back to the East Coast where my family still lives in Jersey. So excited to come back and live in Harlem. My grandmother is from Harlem, so it's just kind of it's full circle for me. So happy to be here, and thanks again for having me.
Thanks, Gary. Hopefully in a little bit, we're going to hear a little bit more about some of the aspects of your life that you alluded to. And so thank you so much for introducing yourself. Sister Eli, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yes, good morning. My name is Elaine Daly, and I go by Sister Eli. I was born and raised in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. I fondly call it the Sixth Borough. And my family is actually from Montreal, which is a small island in the Caribbean. It's a British territory, but it's called the Emerald Isle of the Caribbean because it has strong Irish roots. So growing up, we celebrated St. Patrick's Day, and some of our food wasn't as Caribbean of a menu as you would think it was. It was more Irish. And just realizing really that at first that my gender was what set me apart and would impede some of the opportunities that I would have. So going by Eli, and then eventually having to embrace my femininity and be one with it, and not be afraid to allude and identify as your sister, that I am a nurturer, I am um vulnerable, and I also have strength. And um I believe I get that from my strong upbringing. And I have many happy memories of visiting Montreat with my family, climbing trees, visiting the springs, swimming, um, and not having, or rather having what I thought was a typical life. And also being able to still spend time in the city and go to a community-based organization, particularly Henry Street Settlement, where they have programs like cadets and women operation athlete, and the Pioneer Leadership, youth leadership program, where I was able to learn discipline and leadership, and even how to fundraise a little bit, and say I want to go to college, I want to buy a house. Um, so, and now I'm here. Like, my goal was to get a good education. That was the foundation of when I was growing up in this, Caribbean household. Education is going to get you to where you need to be. So do as well as you can. And if you could get a master's or a PhD, or be in a lawyer and be in that field to help your community, then do that. So, my end goal was always to get an education, and I finally graduated with my master's in 2019, and took the state test to be a licensed social worker, licensed master social worker in New York, and really giving back to my community. So yeah, I think the realization of me being Black and being a woman, I did more stuff to protect myself because of that vulnerability. And then running, my biggest obstacle, my challenge right now is the criminal justice system. So and how that intersects with being a woman and being Black.
Thank you, Sister Eli. Hopefully, we're going to hear a little bit more about how that's played out in your life, and where that struggle is for you right now. Thanks. So, hi, Freddie. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Hi, everyone. My name is Freddie, and I am born and raised in Harlem. I'm from Harlem and a New Yorker in every sense of the word. I was, my parents weren't ever married, and I was born into, I guess, an impoverished background. My family really didn't have any money. We were on government assistance, food stamps, and welfare. And pretty much I actually lost my parents at a really, really young age, both of them. I lost my parents when I was 8 and 9 years old. And after that, I got into the system, and I was bounced around from house to house. And luckily, I actually stayed.
Freddie, sorry for interrupting. When you say the system, can you just explain what system you're talking about?
I guess the state, I was a ward of the state. I was in, I guess, foster care.
Thank you.
Or basically, I was a ward of the state. I didn't have a legal guardian, and I actually was appointed a legal guardian when I was around 12 or 13. It was a friend of the family, a friend of the church, and she took in my sister and I, and my older sister, who was only a year older than me. We were actually able to stay together, and we, were really strong, and we had one another. And we went to the same elementary school. And in the elementary school and family academy, I was I guess, chosen to be a part of the organization for the children. I don't know why I got chosen and my sister didn't, but I got my first mentor when the program just started. So I like to call myself the top five. I was one of the first achievers in the program, and I went all the way through until graduation. And being in the program really, really helped me, being able to have mentors and going out and going on outings with the mentors and having a distraction of things that were going on at home and kind of a bad life. And like other Black people, I knew that education was a way to get out of that. I just knew that I needed to escape this place that I was in, this system and poverty, or whatever you call it, this terrible time that I was going in. I just knew that I had to go to college, and I knew that I would go away for college. So I worked really, really, really hard, and I got into a really good high school, and I was accepted to almost every school that I applied for with the help of, I didn't even know how to apply to college, but I got help from mentors, and every step of the way I was assisted with and helped. And so I got into almost every college that I applied for. I really wanted to go to a historically Black college, but financially I wasn't able to. And Syracuse University, my cousin actually went there, and so she helped me get into a program to where I went to school for pretty much for free. And so I took that opportunity and went to college in Syracuse University. And my sister actually was able to go to college as well. She played basketball, she played sports. I wasn't that good at sports, but so I got into college with the help of family and mentors and education, and she got in with the love of sports. So my sister and I both went to college, and the day I graduated from college, she came to my graduation with me, and she graduated a year before me, and we both just took a U-Haul and drove down here to Atlanta together and moved in together. And we've been working here ever since. And we have family here down in Atlanta because my dad's side of the family moved here when I was young. So I'm kind of familiar with Atlanta. So I've been here ever since.
And you're working now as a paralegal?
Yes, I'm working at a company as a paralegal, and I am also working on my businesses, my small businesses. I have an event company and a cosmetics company.
Awesome. Thank you, Freddie. So just from listening to kind of your life stories, each of you have touched on an aspect of your life that at least one, if not more, aspects of your life which have been influenced based on the color of your skin. And we've been talking a lot over the course of this year about what it might mean for there to be institutionalized racism, which is also called systemic racism. And so that's usually defined as racism that is embedded as normal practice within society or an organization. So this could be in many areas of life: healthcare, employment, housing, education, and also interacts with government and law enforcement. So we were wondering if we could hear from you one specific area in your life where you experienced institutional racism and how that played out for you. Sister Eli, do you want to get us started? Is that okay?
Sure. Institutionalized racism played out in my life when I got introduced to the criminal injustice system. Really, it made it blatantly clear that what I considered my good upbringing was not enough. My family was, deemed, I guess you would technically or scientifically by the textbook call us dysfunctional, but because we had organizations in the area, and because we had support systems, it was still not enough. My education, I went to Hunter College High School, was not enough. I had my bachelor's when I made contact with the criminal justice system. It was not enough. And I even had a city job. I worked with the police department. I was one of those, you could call 911 is a good use of your tax dollars. Not all police use excessive force. I wasn't even considering being racist. Just not all cops are excessive. And really, like, I wasn't perfect. I had parking tickets. I had speeding tickets. Not that, oh, this person never made a blip on the screen. I made some blips. I lived life. But in this bubble, I didn't realize or rather, I became aware that I wasn't protected from the criminal justice system. Like, I had everything set up where it should have worked in my favor the way we are disillusioned that it should be, right? So when I got arrested, it was no help in sight. And I realized my Blackness, but also how the conversation was not around gender, because I was 7 months pregnant. And they didn't acknowledge that. And it was really, my fear was entering another system, ACS or foster care, not my child trying to fight this charge, which was hindering prosecution, was what I was charged with. And just understanding now, having an aha moment, this is what they're talking about. Because I'm Black, I'm not innocent until proven guilty. Because I'm a woman, they don't know that I need to see somebody. My stress is, I'm concerned that my child may end up in foster care. Asking for toilet paper, how demeaning that for 4 days. Right? That seemed like a lifetime just then, right? But all these fears running through your brain, but it was 4 days. Now imagine people that are incarcerated right now during the pandemic who are wrongly convicted, or they were given more time because of the color of their skin. So that was my aha moment of seeing that I was not protected and I needed to be a voice now, fight my case, fight my cause. But there's other people that are not protected, and it's not right.
Mr. Eli, you mentioned you were incarcerated for 4 days, if I heard that correctly, and yet you've also mentioned in our previous conversations that that's actually had lasting impact. Those 4 days have had a serious lasting impact on your life. I'm wondering if you could share with us a little bit about what the long-term effects of that incarceration have been.
So those lasting impacts, those lasting effects is what we call collateral consequences. It's a ripple effect, a butterfly effect of how now all these other systems have a say, have a part, have a role in your life. Because of my conviction, I took a plea deal, but it's still conviction, it's still a criminal record, and it's a felony charge. I was barred from public housing. I'm barred from rental programs to afford affordable income, affordable housing, which is not so affordable in New York City. I had to go through a whole ethical process to get my license to be a social worker, because my probation, my time, my rehab that I spent paying back to society was not seen as rehabilitation. It did not mean I had a reset or a restart button. I wasn't forgiven. It wasn't a clean slate. So I had to be screened, even though I paid $100,000 for this degree, this paper. I had to be screened again to see, well, are you worthy to have this job? And if you're not, you can't have it. I don't want you helping people, right? I want to be a social worker. You need help, but I don't want you helping people. You have experience. I don't want you using that experience to inform people, to change a community, to break a cycle, because you're a risk by existing. And even to, I'm concerned that the stress, that impact on my small child. I was 7 months pregnant. My daughter's 6 now. And how that plays out with her behaviors in school, and how she may be deemed a problem and end up in a cycle, or rather in a system, because they're not going to offer help. They're going to offer punitive measures. And also just living life the way, it's a little fearful calling the police, but right now that's what's normalized and that's what's set up. But if we had other options to solve our issues and to prevent crime or mistakes that people have, and it's the collateral consequences, it's not only me, it's my child, it's the family, it's the community. More harm, not giving me a chance to help the community and heal the community, is what I see, instead of helping and letting me get back to society for a crime that I did not commit. It was a plea deal, which is, people don't know, a lot of crimes, 80 to 90% of charges, it ends in a plea deal. It does not go to trial. So that's, you think, oh, so let me, do the time and take my punishment. No, that's not what it is. It's, you're not being given medical treatment because you're pregnant. It's not given mental health because, you're depressed, or not given mental care because you got diabetes. They should be caring for you in this facility now, not getting the education you need so that you don't make the same mistake, and the knowledge to know. So it touches every aspect of someone's life.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope that we're going to circle back around to talk with you a little bit about how you envision things, and the way things, the relationship with the criminal justice system might get better. Freddie, can you share a little bit with us about a system that's impacted you?
Yes. So I guess I can speak on my college experience because it's still fresh in my head. I'm from Harlem, and when I was in Harlem, in elementary school, it was all Black. And in college, I went to a predominantly white institution. We call it a PWI. And all of my Black friends and everyone Black that I knew that went to college would tell me, it's going to be a culture shock. It's going to be a culture shock. And I thought that meant that I would just see a whole bunch of white people. And I'm like, I'm from New York. I know what white people look like. But culture is the social institutions and customs that people develop in social groups. So white people who are white, people who are different, or non-Black people, they have a different culture than white people have a different culture than Black people. That's just what it is. We are socialized different. And it's not only because of the color of your skin, but it's also a social aspect. We are socialized different. And I don't think other people or white people understand that. And especially if you're coming from a system or a place where you're impoverished, you are a product of your environment. So in college, I had a really, really hard time because of that culture shock. Especially in test taking, it was a really, really difficult, it was so hard for me to take tests in college. And it's because of that cultural difference. I would read a question and I would choose what I thought would be the correct answer. And then I would go to my professor and ask them, how is this the wrong answer? And they would always tell me, well, it's not the wrong answer. It's just not the best answer. And I still don't understand what that is or what that means. And so it was very, very difficult for me. And we, the Black people, the Black community in my school, we were very, very close. And so when we would take tests, we would, when we would study, we would join and form study groups. So the Black people would study and join groups to study together. The Asian people, when taking tests, they would pretty much just like take the test with each other and like whisper in their language, and they're like taking the test together. And the white people, they already had a copy of the test. Like they joined sororities and fraternities, and somehow they already had the test, and they just took it and they just wrote down the answers and they were done. And even when like we would actually go in the room to take the test, we would sometimes be separated, or it's just when we would take tests, I don't know why, but sometimes we would be separated. So even like the socialization of those like culturally, it's a different, like you have white people who already literally have the test, and Black people who are studying up until 12 a.m. for the test. And it's like they already have the answers, and we're just trying to get here. We were just trying to pass. So that was like a culture shock to me. That was very, very difficult. And that's just part of like institutionalized racism and privilege and an advantage that I don't think that others realize that they have, because they're kind of just already born with it and they see it within their communities. So they don't see that as a privilege because they're already used to it. But this is my experience and what we experience going throughout college. And even that's not even it. Like when I was graduating as a senior, trying to find jobs, like I could overhear my white counterparts talking about how they already have like jobs lined up, like their dad got them in this job, their family members got them this job already. And I'm over here like having to change my name on my resume just to even try to get a job and trying to apply to jobs. There are a lot of barriers to entry that I think other people don't really realize because of socialization. And so that's one of my biggest advocates is for education and empowerment through education and economic wealth.
Thank you so much, Freddie, for sharing. Gary?
Yeah, I would say for me, the criminalizing like the Black male, and I remember it starting ever since I was a kid. Like I said earlier, my parents divorced when I was young, and I took it really hard, and I was act out in school. But the way the school kind of dealt with it, they, used to put me in behavior classrooms, and nobody really asked me like what was wrong. And just a lot of the teachers just was like, he's never not going to amount to nothing. I remember teachers saying that, like, under their breath, like, this guy's never going to amount to nothing. And so they would just suspend me instead of just kind of asking me what was going on. And I was just, 8-year-old child that was just dealing with, his parents not living in the same home anymore. So I would say that's kind of when it started, me being like criminalized. But then when I was in college, my sophomore year, a roommate from my freshman year, it was a white guy. His dad used to buy houses and fix them up. And he let us stay in a 6-bedroom house in a very nice neighborhood where I went to in Simi Valley, California, which is predominantly a white community. And we were living there probably for 6 months. And anyway, we were in the house one day, me and my roommate, and we were in the back. The house was pretty big, and we were in the back, and we were playing loud music, and we couldn't hear the music. We couldn't hear the door. Well, anyway, I just see like a gun come through my door, and I'm just kind of startled, and it was the police. And they have us sit on the couch, and they were basically said that we stole the house, that we were like house sitting. And they were like, whose house is this? And they were kind of interrogating us. And we were like, it was like a real informal arrangement that we had, but it was like a whole big spill where we were like, wait like an hour, because we had to get the guy on the phone who actually owned the house. We had like proof that that was our house. And to me, just being in college, you think you just kind of get away, you kind of get away from that. And for me, it was like, I thought like I necessarily made it. And so, but like we had to prove to the cops, and the cops had to actually talk to the person, and it was like, okay, but it was like, we didn't commit anything. They just said like a neighbor three doors down said they don't recognize us from being there. And so it was just kind of, it was just one of those things. And I just like think about like the gun coming through the door. If I would have did something wrong, I don't know what would have happened. So I think just that, I mentioned when I was in my senior year in college, I was impacted by the criminal justice system. And I would say that had nothing to do with me being Black. I made a mistake, but it was something that was supposed to go away in 6 months. It was supposed to be dismissed in 6 months, but I learned that about fees. So I had to pay a $200 fee to attend a class every month. And I didn't have the money. And I used to talk to the probation officer. I say I don't have the money, and he just was like, well, you either drop out of school and get a job, or go to jail. And it was just like, I don't know, he just never saw me as a person I was just trying that made a mistake. He was just like, well, you shouldn't have did it. And he used to violate me for no crime. And so I remember like in 6 months, I went to jail like 4 times for no extra crime, just violations. Like I couldn't pay for a class. They send an envelope to my house one day and it got bounced back because I was couch surfing, just like little things. And he was just, he used to go there and be like, have you drank? Have you tried a drug? And I used to be like, no, I don't drink, or I don't do drugs. I'm an athlete. I never tried a drug in my life. And he was like, I don't believe you. You need to take this, urine test. And it was just kind of like, I was like, I got in trouble one time, and it was just kind of this thing that just was never being believed. And so anyway, this 6 months thing took 5 years and ended up me becoming homeless because of that, because I couldn't pay a $200 fee. So like me just learning about all the fees associated with certain things. And so I think that like the intersection of poverty and just being Black, of not being believed, and somebody just assuming kind of the worst out of you is amazing. It was something that was mind blowing for me. And then something else I learned about, like I said, I had a child early on, and we didn't have any money. She didn't have money, I didn't have money, and so we had to apply for welfare. And it's something I didn't know, but when you apply for welfare and you're not a married couple, they give the welfare support to the mother, but they also force her to sign a paper so they can get child support from me. And I didn't have money at the time either, and so all of a sudden, at first, I start getting a bill and start getting debt applied until I got a job. And then when I got a job, my wages started getting garnished to pay back the child support to the state that they was getting. And so, my parents never been on welfare and they paid taxes, but here it was, I was paying back the welfare to the state because we both were kind of poor. And so it just kind of created conflict between us, and it kind of divided the family because we couldn't be like a family unit. But then even when I finished paying, when she eventually got off welfare and I still continue to pay child support, what the state started to do, because they were in the middle of it, they would collect administration fees. So they would take 30% of my money that I was paying to her, and it would go to the state of Oregon. And to me, it was just stuff like that. It's just like, my child's already getting like $300 a month, which wasn't a lot, but they take 30% of that. And I get emotional about it because it was just kind of, it's one of those things. And yeah, it's just things that you don't understand. It's $80,000 that I had to pay back, and the state of Oregon took 30% of that. It's to me, it's mind blowing to me. Yeah, so I would say those two systems, and just everything is just so punitive. It's just like, it's so punitive and so entangled where it's like hard to get out of these systems, and everybody just assuming the worst, where you always have to like prove that you are a good person. And like part of me when I was homeless, something I realized, I changed like the tone of my voice. I changed the way I dressed. Back when I did get arrested, I used to have an afro and braids, and I changed kind of like my outer appearance and the way I presented myself. And it was kind of funny. I started a business, and my career took off when I assimilated, when I was basically acting white. And, for me, I went to school for sociology, and to me, it was like a 15-year sociology experiment, just to see how people treated me different when I wasn't displaying the culture, even though I still wasn't doing anything wrong, but just the type of clothes I dressed, if I use the bonnets or type of lingo, it's just to see the difference. And even now, I'm an executive director, and when I wear a suit versus when I'm wearing sweatpants, to see how people treat me, and how I'm a target where police kind of question me when I'm wearing sweatpants and certain things, but when I'm wearing a suit, I'm treated a different way. It's mind blowing to me. Like even when I used to buy a house or buy a car, I used to put on a suit so I get a better loan. So there's little things like that. It's just kind of what I think just always being criminalized and people always thinking that you're up to something and that you're up to no good, or that you're trying to cause harm to someone else. That's something that's happened. Yeah.
Thank you, Gary, for sharing that. And thank you really to all three of you. It's really humbling, and I really appreciate your willingness to share, talking about things that are really painful. And we really appreciate it, and are learning from it. And not that justifies any pain in sharing. I hope that in some way is some way redemptive. So thank you so much for sharing. We so appreciate your vulnerabilities. We have just a few minutes left to speak with you before we open up for audience questions. So if the audience, if our learners would like to take a few minutes and send in some questions, now would be a great time. And I want to end this part of our conversation by asking you a little bit about how you might imagine and hope that things might get better and look differently for people of color in America, and particularly in New York, which is where we are and what we all share with each other. So, what do you think might contribute to achieving a better society than the one that you have powered through?
I guess I'll start. I think one of the most important or the biggest thing that we want as Black people is to be able to create generational wealth and to not have any barriers to entry for that. I think specifically in New York, I'm from Harlem. Harlem looks very, very, very different now than when I was born, as a product of gentrification. And so we kind of just want to be able to not being forced to assimilate into white culture, but we still want to be able to, I guess, do for our own and just not have barriers to entry, like getting kicked out of your own community and different systematic things that are oppressive to us. So we don't want, it is different racism within people. So like if someone calls you the N-word, is very different than like systematic racism, like redlining and gentrification. Those are two different things, and not that one is better than the other, but we just would like generational wealth and no barriers to entry for that.
Thank you. Sister Eli? Yeah, go for it.
So I just want to I want to say that I'm a realist, but I'm optimistic, and I'm also hopeful before I answer this question, right? So generational wealth, as well as like a more loving community, which includes white people, Asian people, Hispanics. But I know that there's work to get there because of the systematic racism, right? So starting off by people of color and who are low income to sign up for Good Call New York City, because we shouldn't be wandering the streets without insurance, right? Insurance that if we get pulled over, if we get stopped, if there's an incident and we're not believed, that they don't just take us at our word, that we're able to get legal representation, and our family members or friends are able to be contacted, right? Um, because it's crazy outside right now. The next thing to work towards making a better society, I would say, donate to the Women's Prison Association, donate to Friends of the Children New York, because these are programs that are considering the collateral consequences, the children, the women, the communities, and are organizations that are also helping from within the community and giving us opportunities to um, to overcome the criminal justice system, but give us tools for generational wealth, right? Connecting us to education and giving us a platform to um, say our personal narratives out loud, like you are tonight, right? Um, but my end goal, my vision, is that we have a transformative, restorative justice society, something that is based on healing and having spaces and being able to have these kinds of conversations all the time. Um, and understanding that there is a disparity with income and education, but what we have set up now is harming the community and harming everyone, and that we need a space to heal, a space to hear um, that there needs to be funding in education, funding in housing, um, and we need to be given a chance to build our wealth. Um, but that money needs to come out of the police department and into our education, into housing, into nonprofits, so that we could continue to build and maintain um, that society. Because there's cheaper and more effective ways um, to 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 make society better. And I, for one, think the police and jails and prisons needs to be abolished to make that happen. To live and stand in that truth.
Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think to not generalize. I think I've been in a lot of hoods across America, and I would say the majority of people, 90% of the people, don't want a free ride, want to work, want what's great for their family, and just like any other culture, any other race, there's certain people that are maybe don't have the best intent, but not generalize. I think is the first thing first. I think that's a big piece. Another thing I would just say is really looking at all of our systems and making sure our systems are giving opportunities, resources, and social supports to people, not taking those things away. I think when you take those things away, it creates just an instability in people's life that is really, really hard to recover from. I think that's the big thing for me. And then the last, I would just say, when this country realizes they make mistakes, I think the last 40 years with mass incarceration, since the 70s, incarceration rates have jumped up by 700%. I think when you know, like, oops, we shouldn't have done that, then think about, okay, reparative justice. How do I help the community heal and get back on their feet, rather than just changing the policy? Like marijuana is a great example. Everybody's saying, oh, criminalizing marijuana was wrong. There's a lot of people that's been locked up for marijuana, and you change it and you legalize it, but you never go back and try to help the people that have been impacted by it. So I think it's really always, when you change a policy because you knew it was bad, think about who was harmed by that policy, and then how are you going to help those people get back? I hope as a country we start doing that more, and I think we'll be in a better place. That would be that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. And we have so many questions. So I'm going to try to collapse them into, I'm trying to pick the ones that are the most kind of regular and collapse them into one question. So this is particularly for Sister Eli and Freddie. So a few of people kind of acknowledged a familiarity with conversations about being a Black man in America and how that intersects in really problematic ways with the criminal justice system. But for some of us, this conversation surrounding being a Black woman is a little newer. So we're curious to hear, Sister Eli, you mentioned at least one thing, and maybe Freddie, you have something to contribute, or Sister Eli, you have something to add about how experiences of Black women are uniquely impacted and by what systems.
So I'll take this one first, Freddie. I think when it comes to the criminal justice system, there's two extremes, right? Either black women are the victim and they don't get the benefit of the doubt, where is the case when it comes to domestic violence or rape charges, sexual abuse, sexual violence, and it's always asked, why didn't you walk away? Or, you did something where you weren't aware that you were at risk. So two things with that. Why do I have to, why can I ask for help when I'm at risk or when I'm vulnerable? Why is it being criminalized? And then if I asked for help and I didn't receive it and I had to resort to the extreme where someone lost their life or got injured, or, I was surviving. I was a prostitute because I had to, pay bills and child, or I murdered my husband because he was actually abusing me. He was beating me up. Why is it not where the system failed me and getting an apology and working towards that? It's, well, you could have, and being punished for it. And also not realizing that we carry a lot of weight on our shoulders as far as being nurturers as women, but we're not nurtured in spaces when we're in the criminal justice realm. Our children who we nurture, our family, are incurring costs. Our children are not being cared for. They're getting pushed into the welfare system, forced to care, or the family has to be on welfare to take care of them because the breadwinner is not there. And it becomes sort of a cycle where we're trying to get back to be strong and be nurturers, but we're not being nurtured. And it's really horrendous that we're not being considered in these conversations and in these spaces to be considered and acknowledged.
Thank you. Freddie, do you have something you might want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something briefly. I have not personally been impacted by the criminal justice system, thank God, but I did want to speak on the strong Black woman trope and how that trope is getting a lot of us killed and harmed. And then it goes back into the notion that like you aren't believed because you are expected to be so strong, and that, and even in the healthcare space, when Black women give birth, they are assumed to be so strong that they aren't given the proper medicine, or they, what Black women are dying giving birth. And I just think because of the stereotype and the trope of the strong Black woman, it is very more, it's more dangerous than helpful. And I just really would like to dismantle that stereotype and believe Black women. Believe us when we say that we were assaulted, we were harmed, and we are vulnerable, we are feminine, and we need protection.
Thank you. Another question, I think this will probably be our last one, because I think probably 5 or 6 people have asked this, coming from a place as our community, our Jewish community being primarily white. We want to know how, as we as individuals or as a community, might partner with the Black community and support people of color, and how we can do that in ways that are not kind of re-inflicting the problematic structures that we're talking about, or how can we be true allies and really support you as our neighbors in these challenges? What can we do? Sister Eli, you gave a few examples of organizations that we might donate to. Are there other kinds of either organizations or other kinds of behaviors that maybe are not monetary, or ways that we can be allies?
I think the first step is to acknowledge privilege and acknowledge the privileges that you have, white privilege, and understand and accept the system for what it is. So a lot of people kind of think because we aren't enslaved anymore, that like racism just disappeared, and that isn't true. And just to acknowledge the privileges that you have is the first step. And the next step would be educating yourself, educating others, and reading. And I think we kind of spoke about books that you guys can read and learn more about, that we have given to Aura. And I would start with James Baldwin. He is from Harlem. He's from New York, and I would read some of his books to start off with, and just to educate and understand and reflect that, maybe you guys aren't necessarily oppressors, but you guys benefit from a system that oppresses Black people, or that oppresses people of color or marginalized communities. Gary?
Thanks,
Yeah.
Fred. I'm actually going to add into the chat the suggested reading and follow-up list that's been suggested by our panelists. It's also going to be, it was in the email that you were sent with the Zoom link, and it's also going to be in the follow-up email that you'll be receiving tomorrow. So thanks for calling attention to that, Freddie. Yeah, Gary, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I would say, one, I think doing the little thing. I think when you hear someone, use stereotypes or say something racist, challenge that. So in your circle, with your friends, families, or acquaintances, challenge that and ask questions, I think is one to kind of push back. I think that goes a long way. Another thing, I think the Jewish community, I think there's a lot, the Black community could emulate from the Jewish community. I think the Jewish community have done great to build institutions such as schools to educate your children. You have birthright, you have, other things that, you've done to kind of keep the community together and kind of be able to withstand white supremacy or withstand, other cultures maybe attacking your culture. So I think, teaching or showing Black people some of those secrets and kind of building structures the same way. I think if we had schools that were, taught culture and taught about Egypt and taught about Africa, I think our history starts in enslavement, and that's not true. I think we have a long history before that. So I think there's a lot of things that we can learn. So I think really opening up on how you do keep culture. Why is culture so strong in the Jewish community? And I think if Black people had that, I think we'll be in a better space. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from that. And so I think that's where you can be a great ally.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for spending time with us this evening and sharing so deeply and vulnerably of yourselves. I know that we will all listen and learn and think really long and hard about what you've shared with us, and we're so grateful. A few of you have talked about the importance of education, and it's a value I think our communities share. And I think there's lots of kinds of education. And one kind of education is what you've shared with us, is a personal connection to knowing a little window into to the lives of other human beings around us. And we're so grateful that you joined us this evening. Our next programs for YoVAL are going to be on this Monday. If you are a preteen or a teen, or have a preteen or a teen in your household, this Monday night, we are going to be having a really special program with Dr. Nava Silton and Christine Gregory, who's the Chief Operating Officer of the NAACP, who's going to be hanging out with our teens and tweens. So encourage them to join. And after Pesach, after Passover, we're going to be having a Beit Midrash, a Jewish text study with Dr. Alana Stein-Hain, really examining rabbis' responses to white flight in Crown Heights. And we're really looking forward to continuing to learn together. If you are interested in hanging out and joining a facilitated processing group, just stay in this room, give me a minute or two to reset and send everyone to your rooms. And if not, have a great evening. And again, thank you so much, Gary, Sister Eli, and Freddie, for your time and vulnerability. We are so, so grateful.
Thank you guys for having us.
Much. Thank you. Have a good night.